Hello, my name is Katie and welcome to a video of books that I think are underrated. So just to clarify here, how I'm defining underrated are books that I've heard like one person talk about or nobody talk about, or books that maybe I've heard a couple people talk about but don't understand why everybody isn't talking about them. So if you've heard multiple people talk about them, like, cool, that's good for you. I'm glad people are reading this book. But as far as I know, I really haven't heard people discuss it. So we're going to start with some YA, which is interesting because I don't usually talk about YA on my channel very much. But these are books that I really enjoyed when I read them. Most of them I haven't read in quite some time. So, you know, take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt, but at the time, greatly enjoyed them, and I don't think I've heard anybody talk about, well, any of these. So let's just get into it. The first book I have here was actually an Owl Crate book, and usually you hear people talk about the Owl Crate picks, but this is one that, like, aside from unboxings, I haven't heard anybody talk about, and that is The Hearts We Sold by Emily Lloyd Jones. I loved this book. In this book, we have kind of a demon, I guess, and he will grant wishes for people, but in exchange, you have to give him your heart. Very, very interesting premise. I really loved the way it was crafted. I liked the characters a lot, and I just had a really good time reading this one, and I don't know why more people didn't pick it up. The next book I want to talk about is Midnight at the Electric by Jodi Lynn Anderson. I think the only person I've heard talk about this was Kayla over at Books and Lala, which is how I found out about it. This book is really interesting in that it's part sci-fi and part historical fiction. So the main timeline, I suppose, is in the year like 2065, and we're following this young girl, and she has secured a space on this mission to Mars. She's going to essentially colonize it. So from that storyline, we don't get a ton of very science fiction-y stuff. It's more just she's going in for interviews, meetings, training, that kind of thing. But while she's doing that, she's staying with this distant relative in Kansas, and she discovers a journal that's like 100 years old. And so we get kind of chapters from the journal interspersed with what our main character is doing. And the journal centers on this family who was living in Kansas during the Dust Bowl. And I really, really enjoyed that aspect. But then we also have kind of a third point of view, and it's right after World War I in Britain. And we get to kind of follow this other woman, and their stories all connect, which is something that I just adore. And I just really liked this book, and I wish more people would read it. Next we have a series that I think is kind of underrated, and it is the Queen of Hearts trilogy by Colleen Oakes. It's Queen of Hearts, Blood of Wonderland, and War of the Cards. It is Alice in Wonderland retelling, except we're following Queen of Hearts. And I loved this. I think I devoured all three of these books in something like 2 days. I could not put them down. It was so good, and I don't think I've heard anybody talk about these. I got them in some kind of a book subscription box. I don't even know if it still exists anymore. Maybe Unicorn Crate? I don't know. But she had wanted to include War of the Cards, which is book 3, so what she did is she just got paperbacks of the first two and included them in the series, and oh my god. Such a good series. The amount of adventure, and it felt like very high stakes. And I actually really loved Dinah, who is the Queen of Hearts, and oh my god. Just such a good story. This is one that I might actually try to reread soon, just to see if it like holds up based on what I remember from it. The last in this YA category is also a series, and it's another one that I think I want to reread to see if it holds up as well. And that is the Incarnate series. It is Incarnate, Infinite, and Asunder, I think, by Jodi Meadows. And a friend of mine actually, he had picked these up and never read them, and he's like, do you just want them, and I don't really turn down free books, so I was like, yeah. And then I binge read them, and it was so, so, so good. The basic premise behind the whole series is that in this world, there are no new souls born at all. Everyone just dies and they get reborn into a new body. So these people have lived together for centuries. And this series follows a new soul that gets born. And there's the trials she goes through, because people are understandably upset that the loved one that they anticipated returning is gone forever now. It was just a really good series. I definitely want to reread this one and see if it holds up or not. I might like make a little stack of all the book series that I love that I want to reread to see if they hold up. So yeah, hopefully you'll be updated on this pretty soon. Okay, I have one nonfiction here. I think in general most nonfiction is pretty underrated. But this one I'm just going to be screaming about until the day I die, and that is Word by Word, The Secret Lives of Dictionaries by Corey Stamper. I will link the various videos I talked about this in the description box. I'll put probably my nonfiction November wrap-up in the cards, because that is when I first reviewed this book. I loved this. It is so funny and so interesting, and I've said it before, but it's definitely a book for word nerds. So now I have a few adult titles here. The first is The Unseen World by Liz Moore. I have heard, I think Olive from a book Olive talk about this, and this is really good. I don't know why more people don't like this book or don't read this book. It follows this woman, her name is Ada, and she was raised by a single father. He was very much your quintessential socially inept, very highly intellectual character. And he ends up with Alzheimer's, and her life drastically changes. And then I believe this book is like after he dies, she finds out a lot of secrets that he had. Oh my god, this was just so beautiful. I read this in one sitting, and it's not particularly short, but wow, this was just excellent. The next book I want to talk about is The Library of Legends by Janie Chang. First off, this cover, absolutely gorgeous. This takes place in China in the 1930s. There is a war with Japan, and this particular university decides that it is time to evacuate. However, in their library collection is this set of books called The Library of Legend. It is like 500 years worth of myths and legends and folklore. So the students are each entrusted with a portion of it as they evacuate. Beautiful, beautiful story. It's historical fiction with a fantastical element to it. I loved this, and I really just want everybody to read it, quite honestly. Okay, lastly, we have a couple of series. The first one is just a trilogy. It's Amberlow by Laura Elena Donnelly. I have heard exactly one person talk about this, and this is great. I don't know why. I think a lot of people would really enjoy this. It's okay, so it's like 1920s steampunk is the world, but aside from that, it's not fantasy at all. It's just set in a world that isn't ours. Like, it's almost like more like an alternate universe rather than actually a fantasy novel. We're following a spy and a smuggler, and in this particular book there's a dancer involved, and so good. It's so good. The diversity is like second to none. I think this would make a great television series. Like, I would love to see HBO take this on, quite frankly. It's just excellent. The first book is Amberlow, the second book is Armistice, and the third book is Amnesty. Just great. It's just like great. It's a really fun, adventure-filled series, and it actually spread, even though it's 3 books, it has like a very wide time frame, and you get introduced to more characters than just the 3 that are in this initial book, and these covers are just gorgeous. I wish I had brought the other 2 up here as well, because they're just beautiful. Alright, the last one is a series that I blather on about frequently, and I will never stop because it is so much fun, and that is the Invisible Library series by Genevieve Cogman. Are these great works of literature? No, absolutely not. But are they a hell of a lot of fun? Absolutely yes. It is centered on this library. The library is basically the center of this universe, and the two extremes there are chaos and order. The chaos is ruled by the Fae, the order is ruled by the dragons, and the library tries to maintain the balance between the worlds. They do this by keeping a connection strong with the various universes by acquiring rare books. Books specifically that exist only in this format, edition, whatever, on this particular universe. So good. So very good. Irene is our main character. She is a librarian spy, which is the best phrase in the world. And she has an apprentice. His name is Kai. There is a detective. His name is Peregrine Vale. He is very Sherlock Holmesy. It's just great. It's just great. Each book takes place in a different universe. They have, this one is very, very Sherlock Holmes. Think like Victorian Britain. And then we have one that takes place in Venice. We have one that's just like a total heist story that's a lot of fun. There's just a lot going on here. I really highly recommend it to basically anybody who just wants to sit down and get lost in a fun book. So that's my current list of underrated reads. I'm sure there will come a day when I redo this list. Let me know in the comments, have you read any of these? Because if you have, I would super love to talk to you about them. If you're new here and you like my content, subscribe, stick around. I'd love to see you in my comments. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you soon. Bye.